When I first started doing this show, I decided there were going to be two things I was going to focus on. One, shows that I remember as a child, or not even as a child, but things that I grew up with and things that I have fond memories, I suppose. And to cover more shows that people don't really cover all that often, or things that I haven't seen covered very often, regardless of the fact that they have been covered. Trust me, everything's been covered at least once. Which is why I decided, since it is July, we would do a Great American Bash, and I decided Great American Bash 1989 solely based on the main event, which is a good thing. It's a great main event, and we'll get to it. The rest of the show is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And actually, there's quite a few good, at least superstars and wrestlers on this show. With it being 1989, it is more about the wrestling than it is the entertainment portion of things. But it has everything from a battle royal to a Texas Tornado tag team match to a Wargames match, as you can see in the background here. The problem is you go in with a lot of high expectations because of the era, it being the NWA, everybody in these matches. I'm not going to say you walk away disappointed, but the highest star rating, as we do on this channel, that I gave any match was 3.5. So we'll cross those bridges when we get to them. But yeah, like I said, with most of these, I'm going to try to do themed ones next month. When we get to August's episode, we'll do an episode We'll do a SummerSlam. I think there's going to be 2 of these in August, so look forward to that. But one of them will be a SummerSlam, and so on and so forth. So you get the idea. So without further ado, let's review the Great American Bash 1989. This is JT Channel, and this is Retro Wrestling Rewind. I got to work on my intros. Apologies for how I look and sound today. My allergies, there's been storms left, right, and center, and then it gets super hot, and then storms again. So my allergies are all over the place, so maybe just don't look at my face. But the first thing we had on this show was a Triple Crown Double Ring $50,000 Battle Royal. As is with NXT, and well, when NXT still did it, and now Survivor Series, if you don't know, when there's a War Games match, the entire show has 2 rings. Some matches take place in one ring, some matches take place in the other. Whatever. It's just how they do it. But for this show, they decided to have this Battle Royal, and I've got all the participants written down here. But before I do that, let me explain to you, to the best of my ability, the rules of this match. Over a period of time, I'm not sure how long, they had a couple of matches, I say a couple, where 14 people qualified for this Battle Royal. Not a bad number for a Battle Royal. They all came out with crowns for some reason. I don't know why. It was called the King of the Hill Battle Royal as well. So maybe that's why, King of the Hill. But the rules, right? Everyone got into the first ring. You had to throw people out into the second ring. And when you went into the second ring, that started another Battle Royal. And then, of course, in the second ring was a regular Battle Royal. You just could be thrown over top rope, both feet hit the floor. And then the last 2 men standing would have a one-on-one match with I believe, Battle Royal rules, or it was a regular match. Excuse me. The reason I'm not sure is, well, I'll tell you shortly. But yeah, so it's not that confusing, I suppose, but the commentators, Jim Ross and Bob, I don't remember his last name, the commentary was not my favorite thing of this event. I tried to get into it. Jim Ross is one of the greatest of all time. His buddy, Bob, was also one of the greatest. I recognize the voice, but they just didn't do a whole lot of calling the matches. They just kind of talked about, they were talking about the people in the ring. I'll give them credit there. But a lot of times, and I'll talk about this throughout the show, someone was in the match that had like a history or a world title win. They talk about that. Jim Ross would be like, oh, that man right there, he won the world title 6 years ago. And you're like, okay, that's great, but can we focus on the match in the ring? Now, here are the participants. I had to write them all down. So we had Sid Vicious, Dan Spivey, Bill Irwin, Brian Pillman, Eddie Gilbert, Kevin Sullivan, Mike Rotunda, Ranger Ross, Rick and Scott Steiner, Ron Simmons, Scott Hall, and Terry Gordy. Now, if you want to get the most out of this match, look for Scott Hall. I dare you. He looks nothing like the Scott Hall we all grew up with in the 90s. He's really muscular, which he always had muscles, but I mean, he is bulked up, and he's got this big, poofy, curly, ramen noodle blonde hair. I do not understand where the disconnect is, but just look for Scott Hall when watching this. And the reason that the rules kind of escape me is because of how this match ended. The winner of the first ring Battle Royal, not lose my voice again, please, of the first ring Battle Royal was Sid Vicious. The winner of the second ring battle royal was Dan Spivey. As the announcers mentioned, there were a couple of tag teams in here. I said Rick and Scott Steiner, Kevin Sullivan, Mike Rotunda were a team. I think there was a couple others in here, but I don't have all that written down. So, Dan Spivey and Sid Vicious were the Skyscrapers, which, good callback by Baron Corbin and Dijak on MLW. They were the last two. The announcers started freaking out, going, oh, they're going to have to fight for the $50,000. When Teddy Long, yes, that Teddy Long, came to the ring as their manager and said, we're not going to fight, we're going to split the $50,000. So the whole concept of the finish was completely thrown out the window. Sid Vicious and Dan Spivey apparently split the $50,000. And in case you're wondering if there's any other reason for this Battle Royal, there wasn't. That was it. I do not understand why we did this. And for Battle Royal, it wasn't very good. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. I love Battle Royals. I love Royal Rumbles. I love any concept of this. Casino Battle Royals and AEW, those are completely different. Hi. But this it wasn't very good. The rules were a little confusing. I suppose, again, it's just into one ring, out of the ring, last two men fight. And then they didn't even fight because they were a tag team. Teddy Long does a good job. He's hilarious. There's this great bit where the fans are chanting something about his hair because he's not quite completely bald yet, but he's got the Hulk Hogan going on, with just a little bit on top. And the camera zooms into his head. It's really funny. Also, the crowns, they have to be made of like paper mache or rubber because Teddy Long is holding one and it's just bouncing around in his hand as he's yelling at the camera. So this wasn't very good. I tried to enjoy it. Again, the best part for me was seeing Scott Hall look completely nuts to me. And of course, I will always get a kick out of seeing Mike Rotunda. 2 stars. I feel like I'm being generous. It is a battle royal, and there is some fun to be had. And who's ever going to get mad at watching Sid Vicious wrestle? I mean, there's somebody out there. So 2 stars for the opening battle royal. Not great. And we were going to see a large majority of these people once again throughout the rest of the show. After that, we had Flying Brian against Bill Irwin. If you don't know, Flying Brian is Brian Pillman, excuse me. Brian Pillman and Bill Irwin is hard to say. Of course, I think both these guys were in the Battle Royal. See what I mean? But this was just a lot of fun. Brian Pillman, just eons ahead of his time, right? He's doing little springboard, tornado DDTs, and he's diving off the top rope. People just weren't doing that all that often in 1989, at least in American wrestling. On this show, there was quite a bit of dives. Not to the outside, but diving. We'll tell you all about it as the show goes on. It was fine. It did kind of drag on whenever Bill Irwin was in control, which was the point. Bill Irwin was a big, smack dude. You know what I mean. He'd hit you hard. He'd throw you around. That's what he did to Brian Pillman. Eventually, Brian Pillman was in the second ring. He climbed to the top turnbuckle of the second ring, dove into the first ring with a cross body. 1, 2, 3. That looked pretty good. Got a good pop out of the crowd. I enjoyed it. I always enjoy older wrestling for that kind of finish. Older wrestling was not afraid to have a match end on a DDT, a big boot, a crossbody. So while it was fun, it just, I don't know. It went about as long as Battle Royal did. I think there was a 2-second difference. I know I don't talk about times very much. But there's a reason on this show. But it was fine. It was fun. About 10 minutes. You can get entertainment out of it, but it's not like going to get you off your seat. It is nice to watch a Brian Pillman match at any time, especially way back then in '89 when, again, just like all the other wrestlers, he had big blonde hair. And he wasn't, you could see that he was ahead of the game and gave us a small glimpse into what wrestling would be in 2026. So I gave this 2.5 stars. Again, it's not bad, but it's not going to change the world. Love watching Brian Pillman. Bill Irwin's good too. I don't know a lot about him. That's my fault. So 2.5 stars for Brian Pillman and Bill Irwin. It's a good match. It is. And then the Skyscrapers, Sid Vicious and Dan Spivey, were back as they took on the Dynamic Dudes, which was John Laurinaitis and Shane Douglas. Amazing. What are we talking about anymore? So it was High Flyers versus Power Dudes. Power Dudes. Again, this was fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It was, David versus Goliath, or Davids versus Goliaths. I will say John Laurinaitis, Johnny Ace, was a fun wrestler. Seeing Shane Douglas in this role was really weird because it's another one of those things. It's like the Scott Hall comparison I mentioned earlier. The Shane Douglas, in my mind, is the one from ECW and WCW and things like that. Whereas this Shane Douglas in the NWA, big poofy blonde hair, was part of a team called the Dynamic Dudes. They were throwing drop kicks. They were running around. They were being crazy. But the short version is the Skyscrapers flattened them. I mean, what did you expect, really? I don't think this was any sort of belt or anything. It was just a tag team match. Sid Justice, Sid Vicious, Psycho Sid, whatever you want to call him. I've always liked him. I've always thought he was a great wrestler. All these things I learned later in life, I kind of ignore them. In case you're wondering, it's nothing super crazy or bad or nothing. Sorry. It's just he was like late or he wouldn't show up to events or whatever the case may be. So it just, I don't care. I like Sid Vicious. I've always enjoyed his work. There's things that didn't work, don't worry. But this was good. Don't know a lot about Dan Spivey, to be completely honest. I just know I enjoyed him and Sid Vicious together. They win this match. They won the Battle Royal earlier. They got $50,000. They have one of the worst crowds in the world. It was fine. You got to see Teddy Long again. Good stuff. Good match. 2.5 stars again. I'm just trying to be honest here. While I enjoyed myself, I just couldn't bring myself to give it 3 or 4 stars. It just seemed like too much. So, good match. Good tag match. And like I said, 2.5 stars. Okay, here is where we are going to get into the time thing. Why do I know that the opening 2 matches were 2 seconds apart? Well, because while I was watching the show, the next 2 matches, I'm going to cover them both back to back instead of usually doing my obvious break where I pause my recording for a second. Because I need to talk about these 2 matches back to back in a row, and I need to rant about it. Because up next, I'm going to make sure I get this right. It was Jim Cornette. That's right, Jim Cornette, the manager, the dude with the racket, against Paul E. Dangerously. Some of you were going, Paul E. Dangerously? First of all, fantastic name. But second, who the hell is that? It's Paul Heyman. It was Jim Cornette versus Paul Heyman. Now, you're already going, oh, no. It gets worse. It's a tuxedo match. JT, what the hell's a tuxedo match? Well, if you're a late 90s wrestling fan, you'll know what a tuxedo match is. It is the men's version of a bra and panties match, which means you win by stripping someone's clothes off. We were going to see Jim Cornette or Paul Heyman in their underwear. Do you want to see that? No, you don't. Did I want to see that? No, I did not. I did not know this match was on this card until they interviewed one of them earlier. I think they interviewed Paul Heyman first, Paul E. Dangerously. Still a great promo. I don't know how in 1989 he was still doing these promos that were so good. Talked about Jim Cornette having an old knee injury. Jim Cornette is Jim Cornette. Just going to leave it there, right? We all know about Jim Cornette in 2026. This match went 6 minutes and 22 seconds, okay? That is way too long. They tried to actually beat each other up a few times. Paul Heyman's got like a phone he used to beat up Jim Cornette's knee. He took off Jim Cornette's suit jacket. Eventually, Jim Cornette takes off Paul Heyman's suit jacket. The fans are really into Jim Cornette. I'll give you that much. Jim Cornette was a babyface, a good guy, back in 1989. Eventually, Jim Cornette gets the better of Paul Heyman. I can't even fully remember why. I'm actually trying to think. The point is, Jim Cornette wins, right? He strips Paul Heyman down to his underwear. We all had to see Paul Heyman in his underwear. The next match, again, trust me, there's a reason I'm doing it like this, is the Steiners taking on Sullivan King and Mike Rotunda. They had a team name. I didn't write it down. I forgot what it was. Point is, it's a tag team match, and this is under Texas Tornado rules. So the bell rings. They're just going, right? No disqualifications, no countouts, anything goes, right? And then, after a little while, there's this cool spot where I think Mike Rotunda has Rick Steiner in a scoop slam position. Scott Steiner drop kicks him, or does he do a crossbody? Either way, knocks him down, 1, 2, 3. I was like, wait a minute. That felt short, like really short. Now, maybe it was just fast-paced. You know, fast-paced matches feel shorter. No, it went 4 minutes and 22 seconds. Do some of you have echoic memory? Do you remember what I said? Here, bring it back. Paul Heyman versus Jim Cornette in a match where they just tore off each other's clothes went a full 2 minutes longer than a tag team tornado match between Kevin Sullivan, Mike Rotunda, and the damn Steiners. 120 seconds extra is what Paul Heyman and Jim Cornette got. What are we doing, NWA? This is the company that everyone says was the leader of the world back in the 80s, and if it got brought back properly, it'd take over. No, this was nuts. I got to thinking about it. Imagine that match wasn't on the card at all. At all. And the Steiners and Sullivan and Rotunda, I'm sorry, I forgot what their team name is, got a Texas Tornado tag team match that went over 10 minutes. Imagine how good that would have been. That probably would have been the best match on the show. Both these matches, I gave Heyman and Cornette 1 star, and they're lucky they got that. It was entertaining to a point. The fans were really into it, like really into it. They were really into Jim Cornette. But of course, the tag match I had to give 2 stars. 1, because I'm not going to give it the same rating as a tuxedo match. And 2, it is the Steiners. It is Mike Rotunda. It's Kevin Sullivan. It was fun. The tag match was a lot of fun for the 4 minutes it went on. But to give the tuxedo match a full 2 minutes exactly more, it just made me mad. I don't understand. If you're going to do 2 short matches back to back like that, at least get them right. Give the Steiners more time. Like they went on to be the Steiners. Mike Rotunda went on to be IRS and Kevin Sullivan. I'm not saying Jim Cornette and Paul Heyman didn't go on to be famous. Of course they did for myriad of different reasons for both of them. But it just didn't work for me. So 1 star for the tuxedo match. 2 stars for the tag match because it was good for while it lasted. Good grief. I'm going to pause it. Thankfully, at this point, the show did start to pick up. Now, I will warn you, there are a couple of goofy finishes in these next couple of matches, but it's okay because up next was Sting versus the Great Muta. I believe it was for a title. Yes, I got to keep looking at my notes for the TV title. This was great. It's Sting. It's the Great Muta. What did you expect? Sting starts the match by diving from one ring over all the ropes into the other. So that looked really cool. I said there'd be more dives on the show. It just looked great. Crowd loved it. Crowd super into Sting. I just don't even know how to explain this to you guys. Like, it's Sting and the Great Muta. They did all the Sting and Great Muta things. Muta, I think he retired last year, or it was either early last year or 2024. So he's been wrestling a real long time. You can tell in here that he's just so good. He's one of the best ever. Excuse me. And Sting is, of course, Sting. I'm so sorry about the background noise. I've tried to convince my children to be quiet. So just try to focus. This match, however, did end in a double pin. But it was a back suplex of some kind where Sting had Muta up, but he kind of fell and had his shoulder down, so the referee counted to 3. On the replay, to me, it kind of looked like Muta's shoulders were down and Sting's weren't. But whatever, they did it as as an angle that would continue later in the show. It was really good though. I don't know what you expected me to do here, but it got 3 stars. Easily a 3-star match. I know that's considered average, but I think 3 stars is easily the lowest that Sting and Muta can do. There's nothing lower than that. I think it'd be hard pressed to find a match that's not at least average or above average between these two. So really, really good match. Had a lot of fun watching it. Watching old Sting matches before he was ever the black and white Sting is always good. Like I said, 3 stars. We then had Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Lex Luger in a match for the NWA United States Championship. This, once again, was great. You got Lex Luger, the big powerhouse, and you got Ricky Steamboat, who some people will tell you is the greatest wrestler of all time. More dives from Ricky, lots of dives from Ricky Steamboat. Looked really good. These two had really good chemistry, which I don't know why that surprised me. It's always interesting watching the powerhouse and the high flyer. 9 times out of 10, those are the best combinations, are different styles. You got to see how they mesh, how they work together. And a recent example, don't come for me, but a recent example I can think of 2 styles meshing well together was Kenny Omega and Zack Sabre Jr. While they have their styles they are wildly different, and they did work really well together when it came to their match at Forbidden Door. So that's what this. They're not the same. There's some purists out there that are going to lose their mind that I even brought AEW up talking about NWA. But with that being said, I do think it's a good conversation. Clashing styles tend to work better than the exact same styles together. She's trying to give you his water. But yes, 3-star matchup. I don't get this weird rhetoric that I heard a couple years ago. I don't think I've heard it since. That Lex Luger wasn't a good wrestler. He very clearly was. When he was in WWF, he was pushed into a corner. That's what WWF did back in the 90s. But this 1989 Lex Luger, Ricky Steamboat was really good. I gave it 3 stars. However, it did end in disqualification because Lex Luger brought in a steel chair. Ricky Steamboat took it from him and started just waylaying Luger. I mean, he hit him probably 10 times. Hit him, and he hit him, and then he ran, and then he hit him. He chased him away with the steel chair. I didn't look at what happened after this. As you know, I try to focus on the night unless I know already. But this was really good. Silly ending, but I don't think it took away from the match because, again, Lex Luger brought in the chair. So you know how it works in pro wrestling. If a heel brings in a weapon, the babyface is more than welcome to use it. We saw that recently on AEW as well. 3 stars, really good stuff. And then Ricky Steamboat really could be the best of all time. Gonna need my notes again because now we are on to the Wargames match. You know, the big double ring, big cage, all that stuff. And it was the Road Warriors, the Midnight Express, and Dr. Death, Steve Williams, taking on the Freebirds and the Samoan SWAT team. This was not great. I hate to continually seem like I'm being extra critical, but it's a War Games match. So I went in with War Games expectations, and no, not 2026 War Games expectations. I can already hear people being like, oh, well, you're just looking at it through 2026 eyes. No, I've watched old War Games matches before, and they can be really good. They can be really fun. They can be really entertaining. This was just kind of slow, and anytime it started to go crazy, it only lasted a few seconds. Like when Dr. Death Steve Williams got in there. Sorry, I'm trying to avoid that. He came in and he grabbed Terry Gordy, I think, and pressed him, and you could see that's a really low ceiling. So he took him and he pressed him into the roof like 8 times, I think they said. And that was cool, and the crowd loved it. And then nothing happened. It just kind of died. So this match lives or dies on its brief moments. It lives and dies on moments. So if you enjoy that kind of wrestling where it's like big moment and then nothing much, 1, what? And 2, then this match is for you. It's fine. It's fine. I'm turning into Leo Rush. But I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to watch it. I only gave it 2.5 stars. The good guy team won. The Road Warriors, Midnight Express, and Dr. Death. I'm not even sure how they won. Like, I genuinely don't know. I just know they did. There was a little bit of aftermath where the good guy team was leaving after they won, but the bad guys tracked Animal of the Legion of Doom and started to beat him up, and they held the cage door shut before Dr. Death and Hawk got in there to save him. I guess it was a continuation of a story where at a different NWA event, the bad guys had also jumped Hawk. So they were just beating up the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, whatever the hell they were called. I think they were called both. I think they were called the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. And that just threw me off big time. So it was fine. 2.5 stars means it was I just wasn't the most exciting War Games match I've ever seen. It just didn't seem like much was happening. The announcers tried their best to hype it up. But again, they were talking about stuff that happened in 1987, like the first War Games match. And I understand, I understand you got to talk about the first. Like, oh man, can you believe it? It's been 2 years since the first War Games match. But you can leave it there, but they just kept bringing it up, and it had nothing to do with anything. So 2.5 stars. Don't go out of your way to watch it. But yeah, whatever. War Games. We then got to our main event, and the whole show could have been crap. Every single match could have had Disco Inferno in it. You could have had a turtle versus a snail. You could have had me in the ring against Dean Malenko in a 2 out of 4 falls match, which doesn't make any sense. You could literally have had an hour and a half of someone crapping, and you still would have gotten something out of the main event. I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just excited to talk about it because it was Ric Flair versus Terry Funk. And if you've never seen any of their matches, pick one. Google Ric Flair versus Terry Funk. Actually, screw that. Go on to YouTube, Look up Ric Flair versus Terry Funk. Watch any of their matches. Not only will you be absolutely mesmerized by just how good both these men have always been, for just a moment, you, just like me, just like everyone else that watches their matches, will wonder, is wrestling real? Because these two have only ever beaten the crap out of each other. I literally just tried to fix it as he grabbed it. This is fantastic. The match does start off deliberately not slow. Like, they start brawling on the floor, and then Terry Funk does spend a long time. I feel like a ninja trying to fight these kids off. The Ric Flair and Terry Funk spend a long time just playing, like, look at each other and run away, basically. Like, Terry Funk runs out of the ring, runs around both rings. Ric Flair's daring him to get in, and then Funk will get on the apron and Flair will punch him or something, and then he'll stay out the ring for another minute. While that shouldn't work, it does. It's incredibly entertaining. It's fun. Eventually, they just start trading blows. They're slamming each other around. They're hitting each other. I think they're legitimately hitting one another, to be honest with you. Eventually, Flair goes flying into the turnbuckles, which were just the most metal and steel thing of all time. And he gets busted open. Ric Flair always got busted open. Everyone that complained about Jon Moxley a couple of years ago would have hated Ric Flair in the 80s. All Ric Flair did was fucking bleed. Eventually, he starts just beating up Terry Funk as much as he can, and he starts bleeding as well. The NWA in the 80s, all you did, most wrestlers bled, especially in big matches. What, Brooklyn? I'm busy. You got to ask Mama. Don't let Mama get those. Sorry about all that. I forgot to pause. But they start beating the hell out of each other. I did forget to mention, speaking of the commentary, Bob whatever kept, during the Wargames match, kept saying, oh man, there's 4 guys in there. They keep pounding on him. Here's where he kept using the word pounding, and because it's 2026 and I'm 7 years old in my brain, I couldn't help but laugh. But this was, again, they were just beating each other up. There was a story going on where Ric Flair had like a bad neck, and Ric Flair said, oh, I feel like I'm 120%. Just, I don't know, it made me laugh. Eventually, Ric Flair hit a pile driver on Terry Funk. Terry Funk kicked out. Again, people that hate the finishers aren't finishers stuff in 2026 would have hated this match, because then Terry Funk goes on to hit 2 pile drivers on Ric Flair, who just kicks out. Again, you have to remember that this was a story about his... Please be quiet. This was a story about his neck, and he just kicked out of 2 pile drivers. Reminds you of the Will Ospreay stuff, actually. That's actually a good comparison, I think. They went to the outside. They exposed the concrete. They were going to slam each other on there. I think they might have. I did get a little distracted at this point of the match. But then eventually, they got to a point where they were both trying to apply the figure 4. Eventually, Ric Flair grabs him, gets a small package. 1, 2, 3. Ric Flair retains the NWA World title. Don't remember if I mentioned it was a world title match, but it was. It was absolutely fantastic. It was brutal. I loved it. I know Ric Flair's problematic. Terry Funk was never problematic, so thank goodness for that. But they're 2 of the best ever, and every time they wrestled, this is what they did. And I think they had an I Quit match that if you've never seen and you like hardcore wrestling, you have to watch the Ric Flair Terry Funk I Quit match. Someday we'll cover it on this channel. It's not in the immediate future, but man, is it good. And we weren't even done yet, because as soon as Ric Flair got to his feet, stop. Yeah, I know. I see Leia. He turned around, and Muda was in the ring. The Great Muda was in the ring. He misted him, and then Terry Funk and the Great Muda started beating the hell out of Ric Flair. I didn't see this coming. I didn't know what was happening, but it was just to lead to Sting to come out, and they started brawling with them. Security tried to come out and separate everybody. They just kept brawling. They just kept brawling everywhere, to the point where they got separated again. They cut to Jim Ross and the other commentator, Bob. And they were talking, doing the outro, because that's what NWA and old wrestling used to do. They would do outros, where they would like say, oh, thanks for joining us. What a great night. We'll see you at this show, blah, 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 blah. And then while they were talking, I think it was Ric Flair and Muda just started brawling right next to him. So this was a fun way to go off the air for a show like this. It was good. I gave the match 3.5 stars. Like I said, highest rated thing on the show. I don't think it was quite a 4-star classic, even though their matches are always brilliant. But it was good. And again, I stand by what I said. If you ever want to just convince yourself that pro wrestling is real, watch a Ric Flair Terry Funk match. Someday we will do the I Quit. But that does it for the NWA Great American Bash 1989. If I can grab myself for the umpteenth time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Overall score on a tier rating list, I gave it a B. It's not terrible, but it's not great. I don't want to put it too low on the average because you have S and A, which are great, B and C, which are mid or average, and then D and F, of course, which are garbage. But this was a B show for sure. Again, you can get entertainment out of it. I'm never going to get over that 2-minute difference. What the hell were we doing? What were we doing? But again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, leave comments, do all the things. My W Energy promotion is ongoing. I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting about it. If you know, you know. If you don't know, I've been sponsored by W Energy for a little over a year now, I think. You can head to their website, which is wdubbbyenergy.gg, and put in JT channel in all caps, all one word. You can get 10% off your order. They are a energy drink. They're energy powder. And I believe it is sugar-free, it is jitterless, and there's a bunch of other stuff about it. It's good for you, and it's an energy drink. So if you like energy drinks, check out their stuff. Use my code to get 10% off. I'm going to try to do that more often. I am very sorry about this outro. I'm doing my best here. Next week is the return of Saturday of the Dead. That is going to be internet lore horror. We're going to talk about all these crazy horror movies that are getting announced left, right, and center, all based off of internet lore crap. I'm really excited about it. Genuinely. Super excited. Probably going to be the longest episode of that so far. But in 3 weeks, Retro Wrestling Rewind will be back with Starrcade 1998. I cannot always do things that are great. I cannot always push myself into a little corner where all I review is good stuff. There are good matches on that show, but there is also Goldberg versus Kevin Nash. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, you'll find out in 3 weeks. Thank you so much for watching. This is JT Channel. I am JT, and I will see you in the next one.